Good evening, everyone. Welcome to BlackLogic. Tonight, we're sitting down with someone who is not playing a safe political game. She's not hiding behind slogans. She's not running from hard questions, and she's not pretending Chicago is fine. Rae Easley is a Chicago-born community activist, a media voice, and the founder of Chicago Red, an organization rooted in confronting corruption, rising crime, broken housing systems, and institutional failure in the Black communities. Now she's running for Congress in Illinois' 7th district on the Republican ticket in a city where that choice alone guarantees controversy. Her platform centers on public safety, local job protection, housing justice, hospital survival, and real accountability, not political theater. So tonight we're here to cheer. No, we're not here to cheer. We're here to understand why Donald Trump, why the Republican Party, what has failed Black Chicago under Democratic control, and what actually changes if Rae Easley wins. So we're going to have a really good discussion, and we're going to bring Rae Easley to the front. How you doing, sis? How you doing this evening? We cannot hear you. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. How you feeling?
I'm doing well. So you're running for Congress as a Republican. Were you always a Republican, or did you change parties? And what triggered that shift, if so?
So I grew up as a princess in the Democratic Party here in the city of Chicago on the west side. I was trained by the top politicians in my district, starting from the congressmen to the state reps to the aldermen to political operatives, anything in politics I've been doing. I was the youth council president for the Chicago West Side branch NAACP. And so that's how I really got into civic engagement, through learning about civil rights and how legislation directly impacts the outcomes that people have in their communities. And so I switched sides because while working in the congressman's office, they meaning the Congressional Black Caucus, had an initiative called WOW, with ownership wealth. And the goal of WOW was to increase Black home ownership by 1 million between 2000 and 2010. When I graduated from high school, I had 500 service hours from specifically working on this federal housing initiative. Okay, so I know federal housing and policies. And so after the subprime crisis, that's when I really started to look at the Democratic Party a different way, because I was on Wall Street on July 18th, 2018, when the market crashed, when Bear Stearns president got on TV and said, don't talk about my firm again. You do it again, I'm going to sue you for slander. And it was over with. After that happened, I noticed that they were putting red X's on the buildings in my neighborhood and rapidly tearing them down. And so we'll talk about the impact of the vacant lots later in this discussion. But I was very offended because I worked really hard to get people in these houses. I could have been kissing boys after school, okay? That's what I like to do. But instead, I'm doing pamphlets, I'm calling lenders, I'm organizing forums, you name it, I'm doing it for housing because I really believed in bringing this wealth to us. So for them to take it away from us by tricking my community, the bank stated that they specifically went to Black communities to trick them with these bogus loans. They put Black people into these loans even though they qualified for a prime loan, and the whole goal was to take our land. They said this in the Senate hearing. Barack Obama bailed out the banks and still took the houses. So then the city of Chicago started to tear them down, and now my neighborhood looks all raggedy because it's vacant lots everywhere. So I'm like, I can't deal with this anymore. And I'm the only person who's upset, obviously. So I got my 4-year-old and we moved to sunny Senegal in West Africa. I went into this self-imposed political exile because I just couldn't believe that the Democrats played us like that, especially President Barack Obama.
Now, was that the specific moment that made you realize that the Democratic Party no longer represented your interests or your community?
Well, I had been saying this for years, since I was a teenager. My father was a huge time community organizer, and that's, again, why I'm so active in the community. This is just what I do. Steph Curry's daddy taught him how to shoot. My daddy taught me Chicago politics. So we would talk. We would have these political discussions because my father had a history degree. He graduated from Northern Illinois University in 1980 with a bachelor's in history. So every single day of my life was a history lecture. We're talking about Civil War, world wars. We got to watch the World War II footage all the time. I used to tell him, Daddy, the Allies won. Why do we have to, anyway, I digress. Internal joke. Anyway, all this stuff. And I would say, Daddy, based on everything we doing and everything you talking about and everything I'm reading, why are we Democrats? We should be Republicans. And you say, shut your mouth, Rae. Don't you say that no more. Don't you let nobody hear you say that. This is Chicago. They will slap you in your little face. Do you understand me? They will stop shoveling our snow. They will stop picking up our trash. They will break the windows out of your car. Never say that in the city of Chicago. So I held it to myself. But then when they pull that stunt with the housing, oh, that was it for me. So then I was kind of like a disgruntled Democrat. And they would, I digress. I was a disgruntled Democrat, but then I ended up getting an invitation to the White House. And that came about because I was on a blog, and the blog said Sunken Place Coon Festival. And I'm like, what is this? So I clicked it and I saw Ben Carson's picture next to a woman named Candace Owens. And they said that this was the Young Black Leadership Summit and it was going to be held in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I said, whatever this is, I gotta go because I need to talk to Ben Carson about this federal housing mismanagement in Chicago. I gotta talk to him about these red X's and them tearing down the housing. Like, this is too much. So I applied to go to the conference. 3 days later, I get an email. The President of the United States requests your presence at the White House. Please RSVP. So that's how I ended up becoming MAGA. I went to the White House. I spoke to Ben Carson about federal housing mismanagement here in the city. He gave me the plan, which was to get rid of the aldermanic prerogative, which prevented the aldermen from rebuilding housing, any developments that they don't want in their wards, which then pushes housing discrimination and housing segregation. So he said, we're going to get rid of that. We're going to force Chicago to spend the money. You're going to see a housing revitalization. And then President Trump got on the stage and gave the best pro-Black speech I ever heard in my life, okay? My whole life. And I grew up super duper, uber pro-Negro patriot, okay? I went to a Catholic school that had a Black Jesus on the cross with an afro, okay? Bliggity black world. However, Donald Trump, to hear the president on the stage saying, you're free. The Democrats don't own you anymore. These people are tricking you. They're making you believe that you are beneath the immigrants and this is your country. Your people built this. Everything from sea to sea is for you and you first. I'm like, woo! Thank you, President Trump. So then I came back to Chicago and I tried to spread that. The people didn't want to hear it. But then when Lori Lightfoot got elected in 2019, she went to DC, met with Ivanka, President Trump, and Ben Carson, came back, opened the city council for the first time and said, no more aldermanic prerogative. And I'm like, oh, this is what he said. So that's made me support them even more. Aside from the fact that the HBCUs got fully funded, aside from the fact that Operation Legend came to Chicago, which was a federal initiative that sent federal law enforcement to local places or local municipalities to help them solve cold cases and dismantle criminal organizations. When they came to Chicago, Donald Trump's feds, they solved 3 murders in my family. 2 of my first cousins, my favorite auntie's favorite child, okay? I watched my auntie die of grief, calling every day. Do you have an update? What's going on? Operation Legend came and gave us all the answers we were looking for, and now we have peace. So that's what brought me direct results, not a lot of talking, not a lot of emotion. I want to see what you're going to do for us. And Donald Trump has continuously delivered.
Now, before voting for Donald Trump, what doubts or reservations did you have, and how did you resolve them to even get to the point to vote for him, other than some of the things you say that he has done?
So in 2016, I was living abroad. So my coverage of the 2016 presidential election was much more objective than people in the States. That was very polarizing. So I got to get an international view, and I agreed with a lot of the things that Donald Trump was saying at the time. However, his running mate, Michael Pence, who was the governor of Indiana, failed to give a prisoner, I think his name was Gregory Williams or Gregory Williamson, something like that. But he definitely qualified for a pardon or for clemency. And Pence denied him that because he stated that he didn't go through the proper channels, even though all of the evidence was clear that the gentleman didn't do it. He didn't even look at whether or not it was true. He just said, nope, you didn't do the steps, get out of my face. And then he went to DC. So I didn't like that. So I voted for Jill Stein instead in 2016. However, when I went to the White House in 2018 and got red pilled by the president, I voted for him in 2020 and 2024.
What do you mean by red pilled? What do you mean by that?
What do you mean, red pilled?
Yeah.
So a red pill means that someone, like in the Matrix, you get the red pill, the blue pill. The red pill is the conservative Republican side. The president of the United States pulled me into this world. And it's funny because the politicians in my community always say, we raised this girl politically for a white man named Donald Trump to come steal our girl away. I can't believe you let Donald Trump steal you from us. But I'm like, I never would have gone to the White House if the housing was being done properly. I don't work here. I'm just a regular woman in a house that's like, I see all of these societal problems. Let's come up with solutions through the federal government to solve them.
Now, looking back, do you regret your vote? Because some people would argue that, not President Trump himself, but the Trump administration possibly used you as a muse or a prop in order to garner the Black vote there in Chicago.
I don't care what those people think. What their opinions are none of my business. I could not care less. I am not ashamed. We needed ICE here in the city of Chicago. This wasn't a game. This was never a game. It had nothing to do with the Venezuelans.
What are some of the issues did Trump earn your vote?
Definitely border control, because I live on the west side of Chicago, which is the epicenter of cartel drug trafficking. They bring the drugs straight from Mexico to the west side of Chicago because all roads in America lead to the Chicago Loop and all railways lead to Chicago. So we are America's distribution center. 90% of the heroin in this country is trafficked off the west side of Chicago. So if you're talking about border security, that means that you're talking about us right here on the west side of Chicago. We have people who come from out of state to come to Chicago to do and buy drugs, which then decreases our quality of life. We have cartel people shooting, acting a fool. Not only are they trafficking drugs, but now they're trafficking humans as well. All of these humans are coming with an invoice on their backs for the taxpayers in my city. Nobody else was trying to give us a solution to that. Actually, the other side wanted us to accept that and then take some more. No,
and you're referring to the Democrats, correct?
Yes. So that's what made me do it. I don't feel any shame. Anybody who does feel ashamed, they should check their self-esteem. Do not let anybody bully you out of your choice. You made the correct choice.
Now, many Black voters say that Trump's rhetoric outweighed his policies. Why did you prioritize policy over tone?
I'm not here for feelings. Okay, I am a political pundit. I'm an international educator. I am a registered stockbroker, but I am not a psychologist. Okay, I don't care about feelings. This is not a pity party. We are not trauma bonding. We are in politics to pass policies. So if he wants to say whatever, so what? Get out of your feelings. How low does your self-esteem need to be for you to focus on how somebody's making you feel rather than giving you a tangible policy to improve the lives of all the people you love? What are we doing here? So I could not listen to those people because those people were the reason that I left America in 2016. You can't explain logic to emotional people. Logic is actually offensive to emotional people, which is why I'm like, I don't even want to have those conversations with them anymore. I don't want to argue. I don't want to fight. I don't want to fuss. I don't want to go to any more meetings. You just stay on your side with your feelings, and I'm going to stay over here, and we're going to get some tangible solutions.
I definitely respect that response. Now, other than the crackdown on mass immigration, what did Trump do or attempted to do that materially benefited the communities that you operate in?
Yes, sir. So beyond that and Operation Legend, he permanently funded the historically Black colleges. I attended Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia, the better HU, where I earned a finance degree, a bachelor's of science in finance. And I went there on a full academic scholarship. So HBCU funding is very near and dear to me. not only is it near and dear to me, but it's near and dear to our people because they educate the overwhelming majority of professionals within our ethnicity. So they definitely have a purpose. Before President Trump got in office, every year the HBCU presidents since 1856 have been going to Congress begging for money like slaves. Some years they would get it, some years they would not. The years that they did not get it, HBCUs would close. So President Trump said, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to take this entire HBCU budget and we are going to make it a line item in the White House budget, which gives the president direct discretion over how much funding they get. That the White House budget does not go under debate. It's automatically funded, which means now HBCUs are permanently funded. Who doesn't like that? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's so emotional. And I think that, and I'm talking about my peers now within the Black intellectual class, because we are nerds. I'm an extroverted nerd, okay? So hey, how you doing? But typically people are introverted and they're looking for social acceptance. And they found that social acceptance through community in the Democratic Party. So they believe that it is their duty to defend that because that's their entire identity, which puts me back to the point, we got to work on the self-esteem of our people. All of this other chaos, feelings kind of stuff, that's low self-esteem. We have to address that because if we don't, these people will continuously get in the way of the progress that we're currently experiencing.
Well, let's go a little bit deeper. There are some questions I know that my audience would like to, hear a response from in regards to you voting for President Trump and supporting him and even running on the Republican ticket. Now, as a Black American from Chicago, what specifically outweighed Donald Trump's documented racial record enough for you to vote for him anyway? And I'll give some examples, whether it be, Central Park 5, Trump took out full-page ads calling for the death penalty. Even after they was exonerated, he refused to apologize. Also, the housing discrimination, DOJ sued Trump management back in '73 for excluding Black tenants. And then his ongoing low IQ rhetoric, public comments about Maxine Waters, Don Lemon, LeBron James, Jasmine Crockett, and others. What's your response to that?
I agree. I don't care. When I tell you I couldn't care less, I could not care less what he says about Jasmine, what he says about Maxine, what he says about LeBron. These people are not making intelligent, logical statements. That's none of my Negro business on the west side of Chicago. In 1973, he was a partner with his father, Fred Trump. Fred Trump was a man of his times, okay? This was in 1973. This is just a couple of years after the Federal Housing Act. So we know that the Democrats were very successful in infecting European immigrants with Confederate mentalities when it came to the Negro. This was a Democrat from New York City. Heck yeah, he was racist. I don't care. That's not my business because after 1973, they never had that problem again. He would rent to me right now. So I don't care about that. And lastly, when it comes to the Central Park 5, if I said that I was raped at Millennial Park by 5 white men, I want every rich man in Chicago to do the same thing that Donald Trump did. I want a full-page ad in the Tribune. I want it in the Sun-Times. I want it in the Defender. Wherever you can print it, I want something that says justice for P. Rae. But then if it comes out that it was not true, then I do believe that he owed them an apology. But if the fact that he did not give it to them, again, is none of my business. That has absolutely no impact on my life on the west side of Chicago. Again, that is emotions. We don't have time for emotions. Get over it. Tuck your feelings in your bra, or what they would say to us is cry me a river, build a bridge, and get over it. This is a serious matter. This is life or death. I don't care about that. What he did in 1973. I wasn't even alive in 73. My parents were high school sophomores in 1973. Who cares? We are talking about wealth accumulation in this country. We're talking about safety. We're talking about security. If you're not talking about that, I couldn't care less.
Now, do you believe that character matters in leadership, especially for a president, or do outcomes justify the person even when the harm historically falls on Black communities?
I care about tangibles. If whoever is in power, you need to know how to work with them. That's why even though I am Queen MAGA of Chicago, as I call myself, I still know how to work with Brandon Johnson. I know how to see him in the street, shake his hand, take a picture with them, go to City Hall. Hey, Mr. Mayor, I need you to do me a favor, okay? We need blah, 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 blah in my neighborhood. And I want you to stop fighting with Donald Trump. I need you to stop fighting with Donald Trump. We're trying to get some stuff done on the federal level and we might be successful, but if you're fighting him, we might not get it. He might say, don't send them anything in Chicago. So in the meantime, in between time, call him, whatever. I'm not here to fight. I don't have time to fight. I don't have time to argue. So I don't care about any of that. We need tangible solutions. We've been in our feelings my whole life. I've been going to these meetings my whole life. I know it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. Feelings, feelings, feelings. No, we want tangible solutions. I don't want to be talking about this in 5 years. We have a problem. We have a solution. Let's get it.
So tangible solutions, other than the crackdown of mass deportation, what other tangible solutions have President Trump provided for you and your community?
So beyond the immigration issue is much bigger than just ICE coming here. It is the slowing down the drug trafficking that's coming into my community, which is huge for us. It's also deporting people who are in housing units that they don't deserve. Right now, we have a 120,000 family waiting list for housing in the city of Chicago. 120,000 people. Families, not people, families. So we can say that's close to what, 200, 220, depending on how big your families are, right? And so if we understand that people are present who are not supposed to be here and they're sucking up resources that are supposed to go to the citizens, you got to go. We need that person. These people are in the way. Also, what he's been doing is he's federalized a lot of crimes that the Cook County State's Attorney has obviously run into some issues prosecuting. We have more people getting federal charges for guns. We have more people getting federal charges for hijacking or carjacking. Carjackings have gone down since the feds have been here. So we have more security in the city of Chicago now that Donald Trump is the president.
So I guess relating to crime, how do you reconcile voting for, a man convicted of, 34 felony accounts in New York with the reality that a lot of Black Americans are disproportionately punished for far less? And, some of these accounts, and many could be egregious.
I couldn't care less. I swear I promise you, I could not care less. I do not care. He could have 800 felonies. Who cares? Is that improving the safety and security and quality of life in your community? If that does not add or subtract from that, why are we talking about it? Who cares? These are all mentally manipulative, emotionally jarring conversations. I don't have time for that. We're trying to get, again, 120,000 people housed in the city of Chicago. We are trying to figure out why is it that if you shoot somebody in the city of Chicago, you have a 94% chance of getting away with it because the shootings only have a 6% clearance rate. If you murder somebody in the city of Chicago, you have a 75% chance of getting away with it because the murders are only 25% clearance rate. So yes, we need the help. I don't care about that stuff. Who cares? That's not going to keep anybody safe in my community.
Now, I guess my only response to that would be if this was a Black candidate running for office, do you think he'll have a chance given the account of these felons?
We have a man right now who's being very seriously considered for U.S. Senate, and he's a convicted murderer.
A convicted murderer. Do you have his name?
Tyrone Muhammad.
Okay. And he has support behind him?
Absolutely. The GOP during the last gubernatorial election gave him $250,000 for consulting services.
Okay.
So I guess legitimized by somebody.
Now, Trump allies and legal advisors have, openly discussed reinterpreting or weakening birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment.
Yes.
How does, Black Americans like ourselves whose citizenship exists because of that amendment vote for a movement that essentially questions it?
So we as Negro people should be elated that it's being questioned because it was only meant for us. Every single piece of anything that we get in this country to repair the trauma and terrorism that our ancestors have survived, they've been able to tack on immigrant communities to it in order to dilute the true purpose. That's why we're getting rid of all of this. No more affirmative action, no more people of color, no more minorities, no more DEI, no more birthright citizenship. Get off our Negro backs. Lord have mercy. How much can we give these people? And then they come to the country and again are in a system that was not meant for them. When we wrote the budget, we didn't count on, someone coming here pregnant that was not supposed to be here, having a baby, and now they're on our system. You came here to study, not make babies. You came here for tourism, not to make babies. Now, if you have a green card, that's different because now your parents are legally here. But the change in the birthright citizenship movement, or the movement, is based around whether or not the parents were legally supposed to be here when that child popped out. And if you are not supposed to be here, you don't get the gift of citizenship. Do you know how hard people fight for U.S. citizenship? So you get rewarded now that you've broken the law? No, it's time to go. You take your baby back home to the country of your passport. We can't afford it anymore. And again, it's detrimental to our people. That's what I think really frustrates me, sir, is that our intellectual class can read and write and count extremely well. All of these clues have been stated, documented, and quantified since the 1860s. But yet and still, we still have our intellectual class pushing for something that we know will harm us in order to align themselves socially to a political group. That's the problem. So no, I don't care about 14th Amendment. My child is going to be a citizen because guess what? I did my ancestry and I found out that my 11th great grandfather, excuse me, or one of my 11th great grandfathers was a governor in the Virginia colonies. So we were here from the beginning. There's nowhere to send my family to other than what? Mississippi? That's not my business. So no, my citizenship is right and fine, just like it was for my mother and her mother and her mother and her mother, because this is our land. Please don't lump us into that immigrant issue.
Now, what makes you confident that, foundational Black Americans won't once again be collateral damage, for the Republican Party? Because when you look at the different presidencies, what significant change, and I'm not going to speak about the Democrats, we know there has not been a significant change, but what significant change has the Trump administration has changed in, the part of Chicago that you're really fighting for the most?
I just told you the immigration enforcement is huge.
So that's the only issue.
No, I'm saying it's so massive. So
right.
During the first administration, when they were raiding the factories, my neighbors went and got those factory jobs. I know people who went from drug dealing to factory job to pay stub to mortgage to homeowner. That happened all during Donald Trump. Okay, nobody, and that happened because he came and made those jobs available by getting the people out of them who are not supposed to be there. I live in a building that my grandparents bought in 1972. They came here to Chicago from Chula, Mississippi, which is the poorest town, the poorest state in the United States of America. They went from impoverished cotton pickers to comfortably middle class through manufacturing in the city of Chicago. And it's possible to do again if we can get the people who are not supposed to be there out of the seats. That's how he's helped us. So people have gone and they've gotten legitimate jobs. We have, again, the drug trafficking has gone down exponentially. People were really dying up here from that fentanyl because, again, they bring it straight here and then they're selling it outside and they're giving pass out lines. No, we need that for ourselves. And so now we can focus on getting rehabs for our people. We can focus on getting this cartel laundered real estate back from them, because on my radio show, Black Excellence Hour, a show for people with high self-esteem, I had General Michael Flynn on the show. And General Michael Flynn came on the show and told us that the Mexican drug cartel was laundering its money through the real estate market in Black Chicago. And if you came here, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. And that's what made me mad too, because I'm like, the banks tricked us out of the housing and then they allowed the cartel to come up here and scoop it up with cash. No. So now that we've designated the cartel a terrorist organization. The wires that people were getting from Mexico to Chicago Title to purchase the houses for cash, now they're going to go under more scrutiny because that put the American people at an economic disadvantage. We had to go through the banks. You got to take your pay stub, your taxes, all the types of things to qualify for the loan. They're just getting wires from overseas. If you and I showed up at the bank with $250,000 in cash, they're going to want to account for every penny. They weren't put under that scrutiny because they were getting it from an international source. So now we even have a more level playing field when it comes to purchasing homes in our city. This is a really big deal, which is why, again, I am loyal, 10 toes down, MAGA, Make America Great Again means us. We are as American as sweet potato pie, okay? Catch that. And yeah, if America becomes great, the Negro becomes greater, because there's nobody in this country more American than the Negro.
We're definitely going to circle back on that, but I do have a question regarding Mayor Brandon Johnson. What has he actually done to improve, the daily lives of Black Chicagoans? I guess your silence is golden.
No, I'm thinking hard. I'm thinking real hard.
Because I know that a lot of the community centers, the shelters, they have been repurposed. And I guess.
So that's why I'm thinking I was going to say this. So this past summer, I actually caught Brandon outside. I always tell him, Mr. Mayor, I'm everywhere you want to be. So I went to a space called St. Leonard's, which is a public housing complex for people coming out of rehab and people coming out of prison. Very well ran, very well organized. And so they were expanding the shelter. Excuse me. And so Brandon was there doing the ribbon cutting. So when it was over, I caught him at the door and I put my hand out and I said, Mr. Mayor. Now, normally we speak in an adversarial way, but again, I want to be diplomatic. So I said, Mr. Mayor, I tell you, when you doing a bad job, I came all the way down here. I curled my hair. I put on this little dress to come down here and tell you that you are doing a good job with the summer. The social scene in Chicago is amazing. The vibe is good. You got programs, you got events. Like, yes, you are doing that this summer. So I just came down here to tell you I'm not a hater. I clap when it's appropriate. And I came here to tell you you're doing a good job. He was like, whoa. So then his team was like, yo, P. Rae, he needed to hear that today out of your mouth. Okay, out of all the mouths, he needed to get that from you because he doesn't hear that often. So yes, he does. I'm not going to say he's a terrible, he messed up the money. Yes, he did mess up the money, and he lied about messing up the money. And he's in an adversarial relationship with the president of the United States to the detriment of the people of Chicago. Yes, 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 yes. However, I can say that he's built community centers. He's expanded the shelters. He's expanded the rehabs. So, he's cut ribbons on developments. So he's not all bad. It's just his alliance to making sure that the illegals are well taken care of in our city is just so annoying. It's like, man.
Is that over the Black Chicagoans? Did he put the immigrants first?
Yeah, he absolutely. I'll give you an example. There's a guy who's in Chicago Red. And he and his wife were homeless for about 2 years. So when you call 311, they give you what's called an SR, which is a service number. So the illegals had their own service numbers. The Americans had theirs. He's calling the city. They're giving him service numbers. So one day the lady tells him, you know what? I'm going to give you a migrant service number. Let's see how that moves. Housing immediately. They got an apartment right now. So we know just through that example, they were prioritized. Another way we know that they were prioritized is that, again, we have drug trafficking here. There's a family down the street from me, the Jones family. We've been in our building since 72. They've been in their building since 80. So they call my grandmother auntie. We call each other cuz, we're together. The mom, Wanda, was doing a TikTok dance with her daughter. And her daughter, Amarie, who was 13, a bullet came through the window, hit Amarie in the jugular. Amarie fell to the ground and bled to death in front of her whole family. Her mother, her siblings, her aunts, her uncles, her cousins, and her grandmother. 4 years later, I saw her mother on the Chicago mugshot page. She was wearing her daughter's Rest in Peace t-shirt. She had washed it so many times it was completely faded. Her charge was possession, and she was obviously high. Now, when I had the radio show, Alderman Ray Lopez called my show and said, P. Ray, we want to let you know the first $53 million that we sent to the migrants was actually opioid settlement money. We were supposed to build rehabs with that money. What? So that's what took me to City Hall the first time, because I'm like, what is going on? People like Wanda need to go to rehab. You live in the same neighborhood I live in. So we got the drug trafficking, we got leaning, we got rocking, we got overdosing, we got drug pass out lines. How dare you give the money to the migrants when they paid the cartel to traffic them here? So now we're paying them going and coming? Who does that? So that's where my beef with him came into play. So yes, he definitely prioritized them above us.
So gloves off.
Mm-hmm.
After all the things that President Trump has done, all the things that he has said, that could be very hyperbolic, to Black Americans. And that's why a lot of them, just out of, I guess, some of the acts, the felony accounts, some of the racial issues in his past, some of the this chaotic talk even before, he was really running for the presidency.
I love it.
Why not run on an independent ticket versus continue to support a man that a lot of people really despise because of his personal actions?
Cares?
Hold on.
That's what I'm telling you. I don't care if they don't like him.
Hold on. Let alone his political rhetoric.
Couldn't care less what they like. That's what I'm telling you. If I focused on what they liked, we wouldn't have where we are right now in Chicago. Those are their feelings. I don't care. They wouldn't vote for me anyway because they're going to vote for the Democrats so they can say, I voted Democrat. No more vote blue no matter who. Get out of here. I don't care about that. I'm going to run on the Republican ticket because Make America Great Again is talking about my neighborhood. Where I am in the 7th Congressional District, we have one of the highest concentrations of Negroes in America. The Austin community where I live, there are 85,000 of us in one neighborhood. There are more of us in Austin than there are in most towns in Mississippi. So I don't care about that. I'm talking about the American people who live to the right and the left of me. And if they're talking about that they're going to prioritize the American people, they're talking about us. I don't care that they did not let Black folks live in their buildings in 1973. I don't care. I don't care that he calls people stupid. I don't care that he calls people pudgy. I don't care about any of that whatsoever. So what? So what? So now am I supposed to just sit back with my arms folded and get nothing for the next 3 years? That's stupid. That's very, very stupid. You must work with the people in power, regardless of how you feel, because they have the resources that your community needs. So no, I don't care about that. And if I ran as an independent, it's more difficult to get on the ballot.
Absolutely is. Now, are you a candidate that is for reparations for foundational Black Americans?
I am, but I'm going for Jim Crow repair, which is different than the slavery reparations that most people talk about. When we talk about Jim Crow repair, we're talking about the period after Reconstruction between 1880 and 1965, when they passed the Voting Rights Act. And that was a campaign of state-sponsored terrorism against the Negro, implemented through the federal government and supported by state and local governments. The U.S. government does not play about terrorism nor paying victims of terrorism. And therefore, if we're going to talk about making our community whole, the way that we have the best standing in court is to talk about Jim Crow, because that actually happened to citizens. Our parents are Jim Crow survivors. Anybody who has Negro on their birth certificates, I think they stopped using it in like 1970 or so. But if you have Negro on your birth certificate, you are a Jim Crow survivor. You, anywhere in the United States, could be subjected to an act of terror and nobody was going to have your back. Okay, so therefore we must repair that. And when I shared that on Fox Business, it was very well received. And it was so well received that Ben Shapiro went on the Breakfast Club and repeated the same thing that I said verbatim. Then I was watching this interview It had Byron Donalds and Wesley Hunt. I guess they were in DC, and they asked them, "Are you from reparations?" And not none of that Jim Crow stuff. I said, "Whoa, my Jim Crow argument made it into there too." So that's the best
Yeah,
route.
he totally denied it.
There's no denying it. That's already been quantified. It's already been documented. It's
No,
already
I'm saying
been
that he didn't support reparations.
I'm sorry.
When I listened to the interview with Byron Donald, he didn't support reparations because he stated, well, you know, his background is he has an immigrant background.
Correct.
He said, well, who would receive reparations? Because, you know, I have a Caribbean background. He was going to how will we define and decide who receives reparations or not?
So we do that through census records. I've been very actively doing my ancestry, and I have been able to trace my family again all the way back to the Virginia colonies. I found my fourth great grandfather who wrote on his Civil War draft card that his race was African. I was like, whoa. He said he was born in America. He said natural born, Mississippi, race African. I'm like, whoa. So, you know, we got all these kind of people. We have all the records of who gets paid for Jim Crow. If you can trace your people back, let's say to the 1930 census, okay? They weren't letting foreign Black people in the country like that. And even when they were letting the foreign Black people in the country, they were treating them as if they were foreign and not Negroes, which is why they had the turban movement in the early 1900s, where Negroes around the country were wearing turbans to make themselves seem foreign so that they could have better access in the society. When Barack Obama's father signed his birth certificate, he didn't sign it Negro, he signed it Kenyan. When Kamala's father signed her birth certificate, he didn't sign it Negro, he signed it Jamaican. So that delineation is already in the record. We know exactly who to pay. But again, to get around all of those conversations, because I want slavery reparations, but the reason that I'm not pushing for them is because slavery reparations are for the descendants of the slaves, correct?
Correct.
So if we're going with that notion, the Amero-Liberians are deserving of a reparations check too. The people in Nova Scotia get a reparations check too. And I don't think that that's what we're trying to do. So if we are trying to focus solely on ourselves, then it has to be within this Jim Crow period. And if you can trace your lineage back to that period as Negro people, you qualify. Simple. Just birth certificates, death certificates, and census records.
I will have to, I guess, slightly disagree because our record dates back since 1526. And those descendants of those who arrived during that time, and then you can kind of trace back from the 1870s to the 1890s. But I do understand your position on the Jim Crow perspective that given the time that those people will be afforded reparation, then we do have to do delineation, because when you enlarge your group, people who migrated back to Liberia, people who went to Nova Scotia, that's going to make this even more difficult. And I guess my other question would be relating to that. What would reparations look like in your opinion?
Cold, hard cash. That's what I want. I don't need a program. I don't need a center. I don't need any training. If I want to take my reparations check, cash it, and take a bath full of warm nickels, that's my business. I said I'm going to try to eat some whale with my reparations money. I want to try barbecue whale knuckles, and I'm going to buy them and I'm going to eat them because that's my business. I hate when people are like, oh, if you give people a reparations check, they're just going to buy Gucci and Nike. That's their business, their money.
Absolutely.
We don't need anybody to tell us what to spend our money on. That's our business. But yes, I want cold, hard cash because the damages from Jim Crow have already been calculated. We know what redlining did to our wealth. We know what them taking the land from us did to our wealth. We know stopping the schools from being open. We know what that did to our wealth, keeping us out of the Homestead Act. We couldn't even go live in the state of Oregon as U.S. citizens. That, sir, is a form of terrorism, right? So again, that's economic terrorism. Because if you went to Oregon and they caught you out there, they were going to beat you and lynch you and beat you so bad that you were going to run for that border as fast as you could. So that's what we have to be paid for. I don't need anybody to try to, again, craft it into what they need it to be. That's our business. Now, if we want to put our checks together and buy complexes or mega yachts or whatever we want to do, that's our business. But give us the autonomy to make our own choice.
So you're running for Illinois Congress position, District 7. What is the
Yes.
bedrock of your campaign? What are some of
Housing.
the
Yes.
policies or things that you want to see get done if you had the opportunity to fill that position?
Yes, sir. So today, this afternoon, President Trump sent HUD officials here to meet with my team and we went around the city and we showed them what federal housing looks like in the city of Chicago. And that, friends, looks like vacant lots and decaying properties. So we showed them that. And my goal as Congresswoman is to put the Chicago Housing Authority back under federal control, because they removed the federal oversight in 2000. And since then, the city of Chicago has hoarded $1.8 billion while letting much of its available stock rot and decay. Today, the HUD officials were flabbergasted to see this. They were like, whoa, like based on what you guys shown us, we just looked at housing for about 50,000 people. I said, yes, that's exactly what we're saying. So we need the help. And the way that we're going to do that is by pushing the labor for this new development through the Army Corps of Engineers. Here in the city of Chicago, development is so racked with like corruption and palm greasing and all kinds of stuff that it slows down production. We bring the Army Corps of Engineers. We know that they're going to be efficient and it's going to be done quickly. They also will train the Section 3 company owners to do the work. So now people who live within CHA are directly invested in building it. We build entrepreneurship, we build jobs, because the main goal is to help people move out of public housing into private housing. And we do that through jobs. So that's my goal with housing. But one of my bigger, much bigger platforms is Medicaid reimbursement when it comes to medical funding. Here in
Even
my
though
district,
the Trump administration has cut Medicare and Medicaid.
that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, though.
Okay.
So this is a banking issue. So in my district, we have a life expectancy gap between the west side of Chicago, where Black people live, in Streeterville, which is downtown, of about 10 to 15 years, depending on who's counting. And every 3 years, the local media likes to remind us of it. For some reason. And then that allows these non-for-profits to come into our community and talk about making healthier choices. And now we got grant money flowing, again, taking advantage of what is perceived to be trauma. Well, friends, the fact that Black people on the West Side don't live as long has absolutely nothing to do with our love of fried chicken. The issue is banking. So I used to be a investment advisor / financial advisor for a large firm here in the United States. And so I went to my local hospital, which is the largest employer in the Austin community. About 6,000 people work there. And I courted them as a client. I did so well with this courting that the CEO had a framed picture of me, him, and the state rep on his desk. Okay, I was really out there doing my thing for the hospital. And he said, you know what? We trust you. Take $64 million. When the deal is done, it's going to be $101 million. We know you're going to wash the money. You're going to help us, like you've been explaining to us. This will work. Yes. So I go to work with my trophy on my shoulder, and I'm like, guys, 64 million. They're like clapping for me in the meeting. And then they run it through compliance. Compliance gives it back, and they said, sorry, we can't do the deal. What you mean you can't do the deal? Well, their Medicaid reimbursement rate is too high, and that makes them a risky client. What a Medicaid reimbursement rate is that people who have medical cards go to a hospital to get help. And then the hospital submits those bills to the feds, to Medicaid, and then they reimburse them. Typically, banks don't want to deal with institutions that have a Medicaid reimbursement rate over 17%, which means that the safety net hospitals are the ones that get a lot of the medical cards. They don't have access to the primary banking market. So they have to go to the secondary market, which has less lending opportunities at a higher cost, which then results in poorer quality medical facilities. And then you have a shorter lifespan. So essentially, it's the banks who are deciding who lives or dies. So as Congresswoman, I want to work with my colleagues, not only in urban areas, but in rural areas as well, because they have the same problem. And I want to remove Medicaid reimbursement as a credit factor when it comes to lending to healthcare institutions. Credit lending, all of that stuff is legislated through the Congress. I think that that would be an easy sell across both sides, because nobody wants their hospital that, our favorite old lady who's living on a fixed income and this is all she can afford. We don't want her to have a lower quality health experience because the people in her community are using medical cards. So that's what's very important.
I roughly have just two questions left for you. Now, ever since President Trump came into office, the unemployment for Black Americans have increased, especially with Black women. Over 300,000 Black women have lost their jobs. What is your take on that?
I think that the government has to figure out how to get the workforce reactivated. Another thing that I'm pushing for, we have a social service economy here in the city. That means that we have all of these non-for-profits. The non-for-profits are not paying taxes. That's why property taxes are through the roof, one reason. But I digress. So you got all these non-for-profits getting all of this government funding for nonviolence and all that kind of stuff. President Trump said the federal government's not going to send any more of that money. That was an $800 million economy. So if the president's going to take that $800 million economy away from us, then we have to work together to replace it with something, which is why I want to go to Congress to put in bids for the 7th congressional districts as the president gets corporations and manufacturing to repatriate to the states. Come to us. We got the land, labor, and logistics to support any corporation, any manufacturing in the world. We can replace those non-for-profit untaxed stipends with pay stubs that people can go to the bank and take advantage of. That's what we want to do. So, yeah,
there
we
will
just
be
got
a lot of
get the economy.
There will be a lot of people that state that won't happen because, and again, I'm just giving some of the rhetoric that I've seen in my comment section. The reason why that won't happen is because President Trump is a racist. He's, xenophobic. He's, a bigot, so to speak. And there's trillions of questions. There's trillions of questions that I can ask, or that won't be, I think, fruitful for the conversation itself. But there's going to be a lot of backlash just because of your statements refuting people's emotions versus policy, because I'm a big person that's on policy versus the way I feel. Now, me personally, I didn't vote for President Trump. I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. My candidate was for reparations. And a lot of people didn't like to take on that as well. But
that's your business.
I'm sorry?
I said, that's your business. You vote for who you want to vote for. Like, that's so crazy that people believe that their opinions about your political decisions is any of your business. That's what it's nuts. And they only believe that because they're allowing other people to control them. So they believe that you must be controlled as well.
Do you think you're going to be, and this is my last question, and this some of your last remarks when it comes to the Democratic Party, when it comes to, Black Chicagoans that are turning red, and some of the, policies that you're going to be fighting for if given the opportunity. What's your just take on the Democratic Party in Chicago? Do you believe they have a better chance at filling that, position versus you?
Depends on who their candidate is. Now, if it is, so a lot of people believe that a guy named LaShawn Ford will be the Democratic nominee. LaShawn and I are very close friends, okay? Very, very, very close friends. His mother and I live on the same block. Okay, so I always say that this is my big homie, not my state rep, not this politician, my literal big homie. Okay, so I'm okay with that. If it becomes down between me and LaShawn has the upper hand. However, there is a white guy named Jason Friedman who's running, and they also believe he has a very high chance of winning as well. If it comes down between me and Jason Friedman, I have a really good chance of winning because we don't know him. He doesn't know our issues. He does not live with us. He has never been in these meetings. What qualifies him to go speak for us? What qualifies him to go get anything? This is a rich developer who lives downtown. So he is actually a part of the problem. How many times has he paid for his buildings to get out of their low income residential obligations, right?
Right.
We don't know him. So the people know me. I'm already doing the work. I've been doing the work for years. I have the receipts of it, and the people trust me. I had a radio show in Black Chicago for 3 years. So any good, bad, or ugly, they know. Now, one thing that they, because I had someone run some opposition research on me. And they said, I don't have anything bad. I've never been to jail, no rehabs, nothing, however, at times I fight with my mouth. I defend myself with my mouth. And people know me. This Chicago. So what? Again, we don't care about that. We don't have time to get caught up in emotions when we are in the middle of an invasion. We are literally in the middle of an invasion that they are making us fund with our own tax dollars. And as we begin to really help people know and understand what is going on, when we tell the people, hey, how many people do you know had to move out of Chicago while they brought the migrants in? You got people that have been on the housing list since, I don't know, 2003. These people didn't have to wait a day. They immediately put them in housing that they went on to destroy. So no, I think that I am able to speak to the issues better than anybody else because, again, I've been doing this well over 20 years. I'm already functioning as the shadow congresswoman. So, I'm talking to the feds and making things happen for us as well. And I just feel positive about it.
So last thing, as well as promoting, in support of your candidacy run, regardless of what President Trump has did in the past, regardless of what he's doing in the present, regardless of what he has been accused of, regardless of what he's been convicted of, you're still in strong support of President Trump.
MAGA, baby. I'm the lady in the hat. I don't play. I'm loyal. None of that is my business. None of it. It has no impact on my Negro life on the west side of Chicago. It has no impact on my family. It has no impact on my neighbors. It has no impact on my wealth. Actually, I came back to America in 2016 after going into political exile to protest Barack Obama and Rahm Emanuel. I came back because I said, now my finance degree will be useful because we're going to have a businessman. I came back and became a stockbroker. You understand? So there's nothing, none of that what do you call it, tabloid fodder but matters to me. It's nothing but tabloid fodder. I could not care less. I do not care. I do not care. I do not care. What I care about is this here 7th congressional district. That's what I care about. I care about the safety of our people because in March of 2023, Chicago was the epicenter of the measles outbreak in North America because we had the children of the illegals in the Chicago public schools without their shots. People had to go and get surgeries behind that because they had all these little growths on their little necks. Somebody has to care about that. We have to care about the fact that we, again, are using our tax dollars that are supposed to be spent on the American people to subsidize people who chose to pay an international narco-terrorism group to bring them to our city. No, we can't accept that. We can't afford it. This is not personal. This is about dollars and cents. Again, I'm a finance major. I know money. I don't get wrapped up in the feelings because feelings don't pay bills. Feelings don't calculate taxes. Feelings don't allocate funds. We are already barely making it here due to the piss poor performance of the progressives in the city of Chicago. Okay. And now you all want to bring more people in to pull on it even more. How much can we take? You all tore down the housing. You closed the schools. And because the housing is torn down, remember we talked about the flooding. Well, flooding is worse if you have a house, if you're living next door to a vacant lot because there's nothing to stop the rain. Property taxes have gone up astronomically because our commercial taxpayers are not here anymore. The businesses are not here anymore, again, because of piss poor progressive performance in the city of Chicago. They have passed anti-business legislation. Today, they had to kill the head tax in the city council where the mayor wanted to charge corporations $21 an employee. How are you doing that when you know we have to attract businesses here in order to make our taxes go down? So that's what I'm focused on. We need stronger prosecution here. We need stronger safety here. The reason that a lot of these corporations left was because of what's called the Safety Act, which is the no cash bond law. And basically what it states is that there are only certain things that you can be detained for. Anything else, you get a house arrest ban and you get to leave. Well, friends, let me tell you what that's produced. We have 2 or 3 loop punchers. These are men who are out of their minds, downtown Chicago, who are literally walking up to women and punching them in the face, breaking jaws, blacking eyes, you name it. But that's not a detainable crime. So when that man gets caught, they just take him to the jail. He goes before the judge and they let him back out. That's why the corporations left. So we have work to do in the legislature, and we have to move past this piss poor performance of the progressives in order to make ourselves more comfortable. And Donald Trump is the solution to that.
Well, thank you, P. Rae. I do
You're
appreciate
welcome.
you sitting down with me, having this discussion. How can people reach out to you and support your campaign?
P. Rae for Congress.com. PRaeForCongress.com. That's FOR. PRaeForCongress.com. You can also follow me on X at Chicago Red P. I have my most fun on X, especially in Twitter Spaces. You can find me in a space. I go to the spaces because I want to speak directly to Black America. We know the power of Black Twitter. And again, you can put something one day and it'll just go all across Black America. So that's my goal. And we're accomplishing that goal. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter or PRaeForCongress.com.
All right. And anyone who wants to support her, I'll make sure I leave those links in the description of this video. Once again, P. Rae, thank you for joining me here this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have a good night.
Good night.